This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, a huge leap forward in weather prediction at NOAA thanks to AI. The customer experience key you may be overlooking, and turning up the heat on public-private partnerships. Welcome to Fed Gov Today in Washington, D.C., on YouTube, and around the world on the American Forces Network. I'm Francis Rose. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's rolling out 3 new applications that it calls, quote, a new generation of weather forecasting. NOAA says the applications use AI to enhance accuracy and cut back on computing resources. Vijay Tallapragada is senior scientist at the Environmental Modeling Center at NOAA. Vijay, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. How did you develop these applications, and what do they replace? What were you using to do these things before?
Yeah, thank you, Francis. Pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, this is a new generation technology that we wanted to implement and advance our forecast capabilities that can take us towards the next step in improving our forecast skill dramatically, and also cut down on the computational costs. That is the biggest advantage that these AI models bring in. And these are not replacing any models, by the way. These are augmenting our existing capabilities that we have in our current operational production suite. So you probably know about the Global Forecast System, the GFS, which is also known as the American model, which is the foundation for majority of our operational model guidance. And these AI models take advantage of the physical model, GFS, and produce a better forecast in a much shorter time and with a reduced latency and more enhanced forecast skill.
What's the benefit that you get latency-wise? I understand the computing power and so on, but how do you gain an advantage by the latency reduction?
Right. So the current forecasts that you get from our operational models like the GFS, they take about 3 hours to produce a 10-day forecast. The AI models can produce them in less than a minute and use 0.3% of computational resources to produce the same kind of forecast. So we are providing these forecasts much sooner to our stakeholders and emergency managers and the general public, who can take advantage of that time that they're gaining from the 3 hour to less than 10 minutes, for instance, and prepare well for the impending weather hazards or anything else that they need to care for.
I read too that they scale out longer. They project out longer than they have in the past?
Not necessarily. The current generation AI forecasts are still focused on the medium range, which is about 10 days from now. And they can be done multiple times, because now that these models take very less computational cost to run them, we can produce ensembles. That's the beauty of these AI models. They can produce hundreds of members of ensembles in predicting the weather. The probabilistic prediction can be much better with these AI models. And so even though we are not extending the time horizon like into subseasonal or seasonal scales yet, we are trying to take advantage of these models to predict the medium range weather. That's the most actionable weather that we can produce much faster and give those products to our stakeholders much sooner.
You've solved something that a lot of agencies are working on, and that is integrating artificial intelligence applications into technology that they're already using. How'd you go about doing that, Vijay?
Right. So this is a wonderful journey I can describe. Back in 2022, a plethora of private sector players started producing these AI-based models because of the emergence of the GPUs, the graphical processing units that can contain a lot of memory and produce these computations much faster. So when the private industry started exploding this field with the AI-based models, NOAA wanted to be no behind in adopting those technologies. So we started a project called Project Eagle. Eagle stands for Experimental AI-Based Global and Limited Area Ensemble. That's the acronym for Eagle. And we started creating a roadmap. Actually, it all started in the spring of 2025. And in less than 6 months, we have a system that worked in real time, started demonstrating how quickly we can produce these forecasts and take advantage of all the emerging technologies. And lo and behold, in December 2025, we implemented these 3 versions of AI models into operations. This kind of a fast-track implementation was never heard of before. And in my life, I have seen over 20 plus implementations. This one was by far the fastest and more efficient implementation that we ever had in operations.
What did you do strategically to make that happen?
The strategic development that we focused on was the DevOps, or the industry standards in terms of how we move from development to operations, the software that we are developing. And that's one of the key in minimizing the time and effort that it takes from moving from research into operations. Mm-hmm. And then the second point is we already know what we wanted to implement from the beginning, and we took advantage of the public-private partnership like the Google DeepMind providing us the technology, and we have our own data sets in NOAA. We used our data sets to train these AI models, and we were able to fit everything into an operational window, and working closely with our partners, we were able to test them and prove that they are working, and then roll them out into operations.
I think if I'm at another agency and I'm listening to you describe this, what's exciting to me probably is that you're not describing any great new strategy or something that you figured out that nobody else knows, but you established a very deliberate governance process for this and just executed that governance process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is part of the modernization of infrastructure and the software that we are trying to adopt. And the emerging technologies that involve the high-performance computing also is providing us the support that we need to test and evaluate these models in our development area. And then working closely with our operational partners, we were able to seamlessly transition the developmental versions of these AI models into operations.
Was there a temptation to do it the old-fashioned way, to try to come up with a big bang and integrate it all together and deliver this thing, and that you had to resist to keep folks disciplined to stick with the DevOps environment?
That's a great question. I think we still do that for our traditional NWP models. We still want to make sure everything is tested and perfected before we transition to operations. That's where the biggest time and effort it needs. But with these AI models, we know they are not physics-based. That's one advantage, or disadvantage too at some time. But at the same time, we know these models are trained on the past data and they can learn very quickly. And so we're trying to take advantage of that concept where the past data provides enough information for these AI models to do well and produce better forecasts than a traditional physics-based model.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Are there things that you learned from this process that you'll be able to apply to deployments of other technologies at your agency?
Right. This is providing the pathfinder for our future implementations, and seamless integration of development and operations in the DevSecOps or the agile software industry standards that we can bring in. And these not only provide us the impetus to do better in our forecast skills, but also expand the scope of these models into high-impact weather events, on-demand forecasts, and several other sectors that we are now exploring using this as a foundation for the future.
And you can use the same roadmap for that you used for this, hopefully to get the same results.
Absolutely. That's the hope, and we will definitely take advantage of the success that we have shown with this kind of approach extended to all other applications in the production suite.
Vijay, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks.
You can read more about these new AI models on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the customer experience key you may be overlooking. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation, we drive it. Maximus.
Welcome back. This coming October will be the 6-year anniversary of the General Services Administration's Contact Center Playbook. Experts in and out of government, though, say a lot's changed in those 6 years. Mike Owens is Vice President for the Federal Civilian Market at Maximus. Mike, welcome. It's great to have you on the program. What has changed in the contact center world since that playbook came out in your view?
I think what's changed is the need to look at contact centers as more than just voice and more than just calling our government for services, and to see that there's a lot more that can be done at the contact center on the digital front, and as we're moving into 2026 on the AI front to improve services.
What comprises a mature contact center for an organization that's really using the concept well in 2026?
I think what shows a mature contact center would be one that's not looking at it as a reactive cost center, but rather a proactive mission intelligence engine. The data that's coming into the contact center is extremely valuable to help improve the entire experience for the citizen attempting to get services.
What's the data that comes into that contact center that's most useful to the mission delivery folks at an agency, and how can they leverage that data? How can they analyze to see what it's telling them?
The example I would give for the most useful data would be if you're seeing, an example would be 500 calls coming in about a confusing form. That's not just a contact center problem. That's a problem in your program setup. And if you look at the contact center as just being on the front end or the digital front door, you could really benefit by pulling more than just the voice into it and looking at the entire program as to how it is set up.
Where have you seen agencies kind of miss the low-hanging fruit in analyzing that data and seeing where it can take them to fix problems like you just described?
I think where they're missing it is a lot of agencies are still looking backwards, where they should be looking forward. And when you look forward, you can get into the risk of missing out on the chance to improve the experience, to also the risk of lowering cost, because if you're able to answer the citizens' questions, whether it's digitally or voice, email, etc., quicker, that's really what we want to have occur.
You mentioned a moment ago that one of the important factors is moving from thinking of the contact center as a reactive to a more proactive. What drives that culturally? What happens inside an organization that causes people to really buy into that concept?
I think it's just seeing that they could provide much better experience for citizens. We as citizens are used to the personal service that we're getting commercially, and citizens like you and me expect the same thing from our government. So what's driving it is, I think leaders are seeing that, let's go. We have all the same tools. We have all the same cloud-based COTS technologies, including AI, that we can bring forward to give the citizen a better experience.
All right, you push the AI button. I read in that contact center playbook that I referenced at the beginning of our conversation, there's a very cursory mention of artificial intelligence 6 years ago. It seems to me that there's a terrific opportunity for agencies to leverage AI in this area. Is that a fair read on my part?
It's a fair read. The low-hanging fruit there for AI is at what we call tier 0, at the beginning. If you haven't got through the online form and you are having problems and you reach out, oftentimes AI could help you get to the answer you're looking for, and it saves cost and it improves the experience. But I will caution, you have to leave the human in the loop, because it's very important to make sure that we are looking after the solutions that are being offered.
How does an agency strike that right balance between using AI as it sounds like kind of a triage or sorting mechanism, and putting the person in the loop at the right point?
I think it's an iterative process. We're all learning as we go here, so I think it's a crawl, walk, run. At this point, we're just getting started. A year from now, it'll be a completely different conversation, but things are happening fast, and what I'm seeing is the experience is improving, and it's going to improve even faster.
We have about a minute left, and I was going to ask you what's over the horizon in this area. What should people be thinking about today to prep for a year, 2 years out? It sounds like the maturation of AI and the refinement of the technology is one of those things.
I think what people need to look at is, we've talked over the last years about omni-channel. We really need to look at omni-channel orchestration. Maximus calls it the digital front door. It's bringing all the pieces together, the self-service, the web, the chat, the voice, the email, to make sure that the citizens having one singular experience and they don't have to start over again every time they call in or they contact the government.
Mike, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
You can read more about contact centers on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, turning up the heat on public-private partnerships. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
TrackVia modernizes work processes with a secure, easy-to-use solution to track and automate operations in one place. From staffing and tracking large projects, and to managing facilities, assets, and compliance. Teams can modernize processes instantly, work online or offline, and generate accurate reporting without added IT burden. Ensures confidentiality, integrity, and availability ideal for government CUI data in the cloud. One system replaces many. TrackVia, modern, mobile, mission ready.
Welcome back. The U.S. Trade and Development Agency will deploy a three-pronged approach to diversify supply chains for critical minerals and rare earth elements. One prong includes public-private partnerships around the world. Thomas Hardy is Deputy Director of the USTDA. Tom, welcome. It's great to have you back on the program. How do you go about developing effective public-private partnerships around the world?
Sure. Let me start by saying USTDA is the first mover in the U.S. government on supporting infrastructure development in emerging markets. As an agency, we're tasked with helping our partners in emerging markets take a good idea and bring it to a bankable project. And part of that is working with U.S. industry. And what we do can't be done without the brains, knowledge, and technologies of U.S. industry. So we have U.S. companies come to us all the time saying, we have a technology we'd like to deploy in country X, in emerging markets around the world. And USTDA, through its grant-funded program, is designed to take that risk, the early risk to take a good project idea and bring it to bankability. You mentioned critical minerals. That's one of our core bread and butter issues. The president's signed a number of executive orders on supporting supply chains of critical minerals, but it's more than that. It's AI infrastructure, digital infrastructure, energy. It's those investments that the U.S. Trade and Development Agency makes that's designed to advance our shared strategic priorities for infrastructure development, but as importantly is opening those markets for the exports of U.S. goods and services and creating jobs right here in America.
When you go out and talk to folks in other countries, what do they tell you they're looking for from the U.S. government to help them achieve what their goals are?
They're looking for a trusted partner, and I think that's the biggest value add that the U.S. government comes where we wrap the flag around American companies and go in side by side and say, we know you know their technology, but we as the U.S. government are going to stand behind them and make that early investment to help you make investment decisions on how you're going to spend your money to invest in the next railroad, the next port infrastructure, the next undersea digital fiber optic cable. That's the role and that's the mandate USTDA has, to help our partners in emerging markets make better informed decisions before they invest in infrastructure that's going to lead to economic development for their own people.
How do you evaluate the different sectors in which you get involved? Rare earth minerals obviously are a great need for, in particular, the Pentagon in the United States, but other fields also in the private sector. You mentioned AI infrastructure. That's important for a lot of to a lot of people across the United States, especially within the government. But how do you evaluate other areas that may fall different places on the ladder of priorities?
Yeah, I don't think it will be a surprise. For USTDA, we're driven by by the president's executive orders. And whether it's energy dominance, that is driving our program. Next week, we're going to launch a gas exports initiative where we're going to be helping our partners around the world create the infrastructure to be able to buy American gas, supporting small modular nuclear development, helping our partners make the investment decision to introduce American technologies for SMRs. As I mentioned, AI, critical minerals, even so far as drone technology. One of the president's executive orders specifically calls out USTDA to be a leader in drone technology deployment in emerging markets, and we're making those investments in West Africa, in Papua New Guinea, in the Pacific for drone delivery for medical supplies.
How do you evaluate an industry partner? What makes for a good industry partner to comprise the private part of that public-private partnership?
Sure, for us, it's to have a partner that has a willingness to take risk. Emerging markets are not easy to work in. They've got to be able to demonstrate that they've taken that risk to develop the partnership, that they have a technology that is viable in that host country, but also have a partner that's willing to buy it. So you have to have that underlying basis before we move forward with any decision. I think something I think you would be interested in is our utilization of AI. So we're increasingly using AI in our evaluations of projects, everything from our due diligence to project development. How do we internally use artificial intelligence to help ourselves become more efficient in speeding our decision-making process?
It's interesting that you go there, because as I was reading about the work that you and your colleagues are doing, I was thinking, this guy's an ambassador almost in one function and a manager in another function, thinking about the internal operations inside USTDA. What are the priorities that you've established this time? You were in the the 45th administration, yes, serving President Trump first time around. How is what you're doing this time around different, and what are the management priorities that you've set this time?
The management priorities are continue to be aligned. I think one of the big changes is AI. It's the administration's put a priority on greater utilization of AI. We're moving quicker than we've moved before. We're being asked to move even quicker, and we need to be thinking about how do we utilize AI. So we've already deployed our due diligence tools to be able to speed decision-making processes. We're now looking at how do we create a native AI environment to help our own internal due diligence processes. And then part of it is, as a government agency, we've got old management information systems, and we're going through the whole process of redesigning our management information system to be more responsive to our needs. But for USTDA, we're nothing if we're not looking backwards. And where are the successes? What can we learn from the investments we made? So making that investment in the management information system will better enable our monitoring and evaluations team to evaluate those projects that have moved forward and those that may not have, and so we can learn why those projects didn't move forward.
And I imagine by looking backwards, you have the opportunity to rethink your business processes too, so that you're not just paving the cow path, you're really moving the whole system forward.
Yeah, you have to. In this environment where you're moving so fast and so much is being asked for, and I think you're right. Part of it is the management side, part of it's the diplomatic side, and we need to be responsive to our partners in the field, both U.S. industry, but also our partners in the public and private sectors in emerging markets. And if we're not moving fast, if our systems aren't structured the right way internally, we can't meet the demands of this administration or the needs of U.S. industry and our partners overseas.
How have all of these changes that you've described changed the way that your workforce composition, the way you would like your workforce composition to be compared to the first time you were at the agency?
Sure, I think the biggest change is really building out the sector team. So as an agency, we're siloed by region. And we have deep regional expertise, people who have worked in the regions, lived in the regions, but we've really changed that and have cross-functional teams now. So the regional teams now feed into what we call sector industry teams. And that's really been transformative. We started that during President Trump's first term. It's been building out since then. And we've been able to add new teams. So a critical minerals team, we were able to add a new critical minerals team. So we're constantly thinking about how do we restructure our own internal staffing to meet the needs. We can't expand hiring, so how do we think differently about going about making the smart decisions on spending U.S. taxpayer money?
We have about a minute left. How have those changes, how do you measure those changes to make sure you're getting the outputs, the outcomes that you would like to have?
Sure, for USTDA, our number one metric is our export multiplier. For every dollar we're investing in infrastructure in emerging markets, we're generating over $220 in U.S. exports. It is an amazing return, and I think that is the constant benchmark. And we do 1-year projections, 3-year projections, 5-year projections, looking at what those trend lines are. And we look at the strength of the U.S. industry. Where is the U.S. most competitive, and where are partners wanting to buy trusted American solutions? And that's how we kind of rack and stack our programs and make hopefully the best decisions with U.S. taxpayer money to get the biggest return and hopefully create jobs right here in the United States.
It's great to have you in the program, Tom. Thanks for joining me today.
Great to be back. Thank you.
You can read more about USTDA on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment.
It's an important thing. And I would start with something that seems a little bit counterintuitive to many. Innovation, and let's put AI in the center of that, is really about enriching the employee experience. Because AI is really there to help foster and allow for the information worker, the employee, to become more, I think the term I'll use is human decision-making power. So it empowers that human decision-making. So we don't look at it as a substitute for humans. We look at it as an augmentation of their ability to make better decisions. So a frontier agency is going to empower those individuals to actually become part of the innovation cycle.
I think if you're talking to a fast mover in the organization where they want to get stuff done and they've seen the red tape that they have to go through, like, of course, yes, we can, but it's still pretty difficult to get through, well, you know, it's the red tape or it's the requirements and we have to check this box first. And then again, like you have agencies, well, I don't want to share my data, right? I don't want, you know, phone home and I don't want to report to Big Brother. So there's still some challenges.
Welcome back. In just a few moments, the Federal Focus Health IT presented by Maximus. Leaders from the Health Resources and Services Administration inside HHS and Maximus will tell you how telehealth, artificial intelligence, and modern data systems can help your agency improve access to care, fight chronic disease, and deliver better outcomes. That's next on ABC7 in Washington. You can watch it on demand, too, at fedgovtoday.com and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10. You'll get a look at the cybersecurity road ahead for USDA. Its Chief Information Security Officer, Tony Branham, will be here. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.